Life is often taken for granted, especially by those who have never confronted its end. Rob was one such person, living his life with little regard for the afterlife or spiritual matters. He was a man driven by ambition, caught up in the everyday hustle, with barely a thought given to matters of faith. But one day, his life changed forever. He suffered a near-fatal accident that would take him on a journey beyond life itself. What he saw was more terrifying than anything he could have ever imagined: hell. The accident. It was an ordinary day when tragedy struck. Rob, driving home from a late-night shift, was tired but eager to get home and unwind. The road was dark and empty, and his eyelids were heavy. It only took a split second, a moment of inattention, for his car to veer off the road. He crashed into a tree at high speed, and everything went black. When he came to, he was no longer in his car. He wasn't in the hospital, either. In fact, Rob couldn't tell where he was at all. The world around him seemed strange, void of the usual markers of life: no trees, no sky, no roads, just an unsettling grayness that stretched endlessly in every direction. Panic began to rise within him. Something wasn't right. Entering hell. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled, and the air thickened with heat. The gray mist dissolved, and Rob found himself descending into a pit of darkness. He tried to scream, but no sound came from his throat. He felt himself being pulled down, deeper and deeper, until he hit solid ground. When he opened his eyes, the scene before him was horrifying. He was in hell, a place of eternal torment, a realm he had once believed to be nothing more than a myth. But now, standing on its scorched soil, he knew it was all too real. The sky above him was black, filled with swirling ash and flames that shot out sporadically like volcanic eruptions. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur and decay, making it hard to breathe. The landscape was jagged, with sharp rocks jutting out from the ground, and rivers of molten lava snaked through the valleys. The heat was unbearable, searing his skin even though he wasn't physically burning. Everywhere he looked, he saw suffering. The tortured souls. As Rob stood frozen in terror, he noticed figures moving around him, thousands, perhaps millions of them. These were the souls of the damned, the people who had rejected Jesus Christ in life and were now paying the ultimate price for their decisions. Their faces were twisted in agony, their bodies contorted by endless pain and torment. He saw some people chained to the ground, their skin burning and regenerating over and over again, their screams piercing the air. Others were locked in cages made of fire, their bodies writhing as the flames licked at their flesh. But there was no escape for them, no reprieve, no moment of rest. The torment was eternal. Rob moved through this nightmare, his heart pounding in his chest. He saw people being tortured in ways that defied explanation. Some were submerged in boiling lakes of fire, their flesh melting away only to grow back so the process could begin again. Others were being torn apart by demonic creatures, their screams mixing with the low growl of the beasts as they feasted on their prey. The demons themselves were grotesque, twisted, monstrous beings that seemed to take pleasure in the suffering they inflicted. They prowled the landscape, watching over their captives with cruel eyes, ensuring that no one escaped their fate. The sight of these creatures sent chills down Rob's spine. In the distance, he could hear the sound of wailing and gnashing of teeth, a haunting reminder of the biblical description of hell. The souls of the damned cried out for mercy, but there was none to be found. They were beyond redemption, their fate sealed by the choices they had made in life. The sins that led them here. As Rob wandered through this forsaken realm, he began to realize the common thread that connected these lost souls. These were the people who had rejected Jesus Christ, those who had chosen to live their lives without regard for the Savior's sacrifice. Some of them had embraced false gods, worshipping idols made of gold and stone instead of turning to the one true God. Others had lived lives of selfish indulgence, pursuing wealth, power, and pleasure at the expense of their souls. Still others had simply been indifferent, ignoring the call of Christ and living as though this life was all there was. Rob saw men and women from all walks of life, the rich and the poor, the powerful and the weak, the famous and the unknown. Their earthly status meant nothing here. In hell, they were all equal in their suffering, equal in their regret. He overheard their cries, their desperate pleas for another chance, another opportunity to accept Christ and be saved. But it was too late. Their time had passed, and now they were locked in this place of eternal torment. One man, a businessman in a fine suit, screamed as flames consumed him. "I thought money would save me. I thought I didn't need God," he wailed, but no one came to his aid. A woman, once a famous celebrity, was chained to a rock, her beauty consumed by the flames. "I worshipped myself. I didn't think I needed anyone else," she cried, but her words fell on deaf ears. Everywhere Rob looked, he saw the consequences of rejecting Jesus. It was a sobering realization, one that filled him with dread. He had lived much of his life the same way, indifferent to faith, focused on the here and now, never thinking about what came after death. Confronting his fate. The further Rob traveled into hell, the more he realized that he, too, was on the verge of becoming one of these lost souls. His indifference to Christ, his apathy toward salvation, it all made sense now. He had spent his life chasing after things that didn't matter, neglecting the one thing that did, his relationship with God. As this realization hit him, Rob felt the weight of his sins pressing down on him. He could feel the heat of the flames licking at his feet, the pull of the darkness dragging him down. Was this his fate? Was he destined to spend eternity in this place of torment, cut off from God forever? Desperation gripped him, and for the first time in his life, Rob fell to his knees and prayed. He didn't know if anyone would hear him, but he had to try. With tears streaming down his face, he begged for forgiveness. He pleaded with God to save him from this fate, to give him another chance. And then, through the darkness, a voice called out his name. Jesus call. Rob, the voice said, soft yet powerful. It cut through the noise of the tortured souls, through the heat and the flames, reaching straight into Rob's heart. He looked up, and in the distance, he saw a figure standing in the midst of the chaos. It was Jesus. The sight of him took Rob's breath away. Jesus stood tall, his white robes glowing with a radiant light that seemed to push back the darkness. His face was full of compassion, his eyes filled with love and sorrow. He was everything Rob had heard about but never truly believed in. Rob, Jesus said again, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Rob wept at the sight of him. He knew that he was unworthy of such grace, unworthy of even being in the presence of the Savior. But Jesus didn't turn away. Instead, he reached out his hand. Come to me, Rob, Jesus said. Your time is not yet over. You have been given a second chance. Rob hesitated for a moment, unsure if he deserved such mercy. But the love in Jesus' eyes was undeniable. Slowly, he reached out and took Jesus' hand. As soon as their hands touched, the flames of hell disappeared. The heat vanished, the screams faded, and the darkness lifted. In an instant, Rob found himself back in his hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses who had been working to save his life. He gasped for air, his heart pounding in his chest as the monitors beeped frantically. He was alive. The transformation. Rob's near-death experience changed him in ways he could never have imagined. He had seen hell with his own eyes, witnessed the torment of those who had rejected Christ, and heard Jesus' voice calling him back from the brink of eternal damnation. From that day forward, Rob was a changed man. He gave his life to Christ, devoting himself to spreading the message of salvation to anyone who would listen. He knew that he had been given a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. He spoke of hell not as a vague concept, but as a real place, one that awaited those who rejected Jesus. But he also spoke of the love and mercy of Christ, who offers salvation to all who turn to him in faith. Rob's life became a testament to the power of grace. He knew that he had been saved from the very fires of hell, and he wanted to share that message with the world. Conclusion. Rob's near-death experience was a wake-up call, a glimpse into the reality of the afterlife that many choose to ignore. Hell is not a myth or a metaphor, it is a place of eternal torment for those who reject Jesus Christ. But it is also a place from which we can be saved, if we choose.